For 2017, the Ephrata Turnpoint database is receiving a slew of updates and changes. This video is intended to give pilots an overview of the major changes and additions that have been made. Note that the video will not be an exhaustive review of all turnpoints, so pilots are strongly encouraged to study the turnpoint files and maps on their own. The new files are now live on the worldwide Turnpoint Soaring Exchange, and this video will review the major changes and additions for the year. Since we cannot cover every detail, here is a summary of what has been done. First, we've added a new start cylinder on the plateau. Second, we've converted unpopular airport turnpoints to landables only, and we're replacing the turnpoints with nearby, more usable options. Third, we're adding a couple of turnpoints on the plateau and east of Banks Lake to aid with MATs and fine-tuning area task distances without resorting to huge cylinders. We're also adding some usable turnpoints in the mountains to encourage task diversity when cloud base is high, or when the mountains will have clouds but the eastern task area will be blue. Lastly, landable points, such as private airstrips, have been updated and/or removed to improve accuracy and to avoid decommissioned strips that are not usable anymore. Let's start with the start. This new location was suggested by Greg Mecklenburg and Ursula Howland, and it provides a start cylinder that's clear of the Ephrata Airport and the pattern. Note that this new cylinder still encompasses popular house thermals, and it still puts the towplane drop zone 1 to 2 miles inside the edge of the cylinder. That's roughly equidistant from the center of the old cylinder. The difference is that with the old start zone, you move out of the cylinder as you climb up onto the plateau, whereas this new start has the opposite effect. You move deeper into the cylinder as you move further onto the plateau. Note that the old start remains in the Turnpoint database and can still be used. The first turnpoint we'll talk about is Anderson Airport. Common consensus is that it is a sinkhole, and people are loath to cross the river to it unless the clouds there are remarkable. Only a tiny sliver of the southern part of a turn cylinder was ever used by most pilots, so it is being removed as a turnpoint. A new turnpoint will be substituted nearby called Rocky Butte Tower. This is a cliff with a small comms tower at the north end of the plateau, and it is easy to spot. It is 2 miles south of the river, which means a large portion of the turnpoint cylinder will be usable when called with something like a 5-mile radius. A larger cylinder can also be used to provide flexibility for pilots to fly further west. Note that Anderson Airport will remain in the database as a landable point. For MAT tasks and area tasks with small radii, the Chelan Airport poses a similar quandary as Anderson Airport. Therefore, a new turnpoint on the east side of the river is being added, called Peach Road. This easily identifiable road drops off the edge of the plateau and winds up at a small private airstrip down by the water. Once again, this new turnpoint provides more flexibility and an on-plateau destination when Mansfield doesn't quite give the task caller enough distance. The Peach Road turnpoint is 11 miles northwest of Mansfield and 6.5 miles northeast of Chelan Airport. Like Anderson Airport, the Chelan Airport will remain in the database as a landable point. Jumping south, the next airport to highlight is Pangbourne Field. TSA restrictions make the use of the airfield difficult, and the area over town is generally considered poor for thermaling. Therefore, Pangbourne has been removed as a turnpoint, and instead we will use a nearby spot on the Wenatchee Ridge. The proposed turnpoint is located at the corner of a field that is also an identifiable corner of the ridgeline. As with the Rocky Butte turnpoint, this new location allows more of the turnpoint cylinder to be considered usable by most pilots, and areas over town that are generating thermal or wave lift will still be inside of a reasonably sized turn cylinder. Closer to home, Red Nailers Navy is being added. This turnpoint is just a few miles south-southwest of the town of Ephrata, and it features some interesting industrial artwork on the ground. It can be used as a steering point at the end of tasks, and can also help to claim a little extra distance on some MATs. Shifting to the extreme southeast corner of the task area, Dayton Airport no longer exists, and several of the private airstrips nearby are simply not landable anymore. Therefore, Dayton has been removed as a turnpoint, and Little Goose Lock and Dam Airport serves as its replacement. The final new turnpoint being added in the heart of the task area is Hanson's Silos. This is a railroad depot near Elmira, and again it is intended to provide additional task calling flexibility when small radius cylinders are desired. It is approximately 13 miles from both Wilbur and the Electric City Airport, and it is 16 miles from Dry Falls Dam. So this brings us now to the new mountain turnpoints, shown in yellow on this map. As you can see, they generally ring the western and northern edges of the task area. The first one, and one of the most remote, is Slide Peak. This turnpoint can be called to encourage pilots to run up one of the ranges northeast of Grand Coulee Dam, and it can also be used as a jump point for east-west flying in these mountains. The turnpoint lies at a peak among a whole series of 4,000-foot mountains. Slide Peak has strong westerly exposure and is slightly higher than the surrounding peaks. The Highway 21 Valley, to the west, provides opportunities for pilots to work their way up finger ridges into this turnpoint, as well as a southern escape route. And a drainage to the southeast allows pilots to run for White Rick Field if necessary. Moving westward, the next new turnpoint to examine is Moses Mountain Lookout. This is a lookout tower on a very prominent peak halfway between Omak and Slide Peak. At 6,800 feet, this turnpoint is only intended to be used on very high cloud-based days. But with ridges rising up towards this peak from almost every direction, it provides ample opportunity for pilots to work up to the summit. From the summit, the Omak Airport is 22 miles away at a glide ratio of 22:1. An alternative escape route lies to the south-southeast, where some fields near Nespelem are located just 11 miles from the turnpoint. Continuing west, the Buck Mountain Turnpoint sits on a 6,000-foot peak, again with a lookout tower. It is near the Loop Loop ski resort along Highway 20, and the highway corridor provides a route down to the Okanagan Legion Airport just 12 miles to the east, as well as the Twisp Airport 14 miles to the west. This area is frequently visited by pilots flying out of Twisp, and the numerous lower peaks and finger ridges provide ample opportunity for climbs. South of Buck Mountain is Knowlton Knob. This turnpoint is 10 miles west of Anderson Airport, and can be used as a substitute for that old turnpoint when the task caller wants to ensure that contestants cross the Columbia River. The turnpoint naturally directs pilots to higher terrain to ensure that they can land back at Anderson if necessary. The turnpoint is situated at the top of a ridge with a distinctive bowl facing west and south, which should provide good sun exposure and plenty of thermal opportunities. Lying at 4,000 feet, this turnpoint is lower and easier to reach than many of the other mountain turnpoints. Jumping across the Methau Valley to the northwest, we come now to Mission Peak. This 5,700-foot peak sits in between the lower ridges near Twisp and the very high peaks of the Sawtooth Mountains. When used in an assigned task or with a small cylinder radius, it allows pilots to achieve the turnpoint without climbing very high. With a larger radius, it can enable pilots to fly above the razor ridges and alpine cirques of the Sawtooth Range. If things are not working in this area, it is easy to escape from this peak down several drainages to Twisp Airport just 10 miles away. Closer in to Lake Chelan, Fox Peak is a 6,200-foot knob on the main ridgeline separating Lake Chelan from the Methau Valley. Pilots can work their way to the turnpoint via this main ridge, or from the lower slopes near the Methau, or from the high peaks south across Chelan Lake. If necessary, easy glides down to Twisp or Chelan Airport are possible from these locations. 16 miles south of Fox Peak is Baldy Mountain, a 6,400-foot peak on the ridgeline that extends west from Chelan Butte. This turnpoint can be used as an entry up into the higher mountains and farther flung turnpoints, or simply as a turnpoint that forces pilots to cross the Columbia to the west and gain a fair amount of altitude before turning off in a different direction. Another 16 miles south is Chumstick Mountain. This 5,800-foot turnpoint is a high spot in the long ridgeline that runs up past Glacier Peak. Pilots often reach Chumstick by running up the ridge near Rocky Reach Dam, but the peak also has clear approaches from the north and the south, with finger ridges providing climb opportunities. Kashmir Airfield is just 10 miles to the south. At 66 miles from the start cylinder, Chickaman Ridge represents a deep penetration into the Cascade Mountains. The ridges are straightforward to follow, but at 6,600 feet, this turnpoint is only usable when cloud base is high. The Lake Wenatchee Valley is a low-elevation escape, and the Lake Wenatchee Airport is only 11 miles from the turnpoint. However, it is worth noting that Lake Wenatchee Airport is the only great landing option within 15 to 20 miles of this turnpoint. Finally, we have Tronson Ridge, at the southern end of the new turnpoints. This ridge starts at the well-known Mission Ridge area and points northwest towards Leavenworth while it drops in elevation. The turnpoint itself is at 5,000 feet, and its location was chosen to be far enough into the mountains to ensure that pilots must climb up out of the Columbia River Basin to reach it, but still provide an easy exit down to Kashmir or back towards Pangbourne Field. The turnpoint was also chosen to allow pilots to reach it without having to climb up to the 6,900-foot summit of Mission Ridge Peak. Ideally, this turnpoint is used on high cloud-based days as the start or end of a north-south run in the mountains. In summary, these turnpoint changes provide added flexibility for MATs and area tasks in the Columbia Basin. They also provide new options for mountain soaring during contests, ensuring pilots a variety of terrain and requiring them to exhibit a broader range of skill. Stay safe and have fun flying in the Ephrata Task Area.